our interview, if that's what you want to call it. It is what I want to call it. But we're going to get a recap here of the Ozark Highlands Trail. We're joined by guest and fan favorite Mims, the Mimster.
A.K.A. Fireball.
Fireball. You know her from the Girls episode. What else have you been on? JMT recap.
Episode.
I don't know the numbers offhand because I didn't research that, but I could have.
No.
And then obviously Chaunce. Chaunce is here too.
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Yeah. Let's jump right into it. I'm going to talk very little because we have very little notes. But the Ozark Highlands Trail, it's been a popular subject here on the podcast of late. Obviously, we talked to Tim Ernst not that long ago, and you were so inspired by that conversation, you decided that you had to try to quit your job and go hike the trail, and you're back.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. I had messaged you during the episode that I was already considering it.
I know, I like to spin things.
Yes, that's very good of you.
To make it seem like our podcast is so influential that your mind was changed.
Yes, I am heavily influenced by this podcast on a day-to-day.
Yes.
Yes, we took 10 days. We had 10 hiking days. We started on the 7th, finished on the 17th, and we did about 175 miles. The original trail is around 164. It's kind of weird because they advertise on like the starting billboard at Lake Fort Smith State Park that the trail's 254 miles. But it's split into 3 sections, which is the west section, the east section, and the north section. And the west and the east combined make up that original 164, whatever it was. And the
Boston Mountain section.
And the northern section is the one that they're currently extending it to.
Yeah.
And so in that northern section, there are 3 stretches where there's not even trail built yet. Mm-hmm. One of them they call a bushwhack, but there's no trail. So
you're literally just walking aimlessly through the woods?
Well, whenever you're off trail on the OHT, it's really like brambles of pricker bushes. Mm. So like my tent bag got torn. Luckily my tent didn't, but I've got like pricker cuts all over my legs from walking around down trees. So for the most part, that northern section isn't fully done yet. So I was kind of surprised to see that it's being advertised as a 254-mile trail. That
was one thing I thought that was somewhat confusing, even in our interview with Tim, was just trying to get a straightforward answer on the mileage. Mm-hmm. And I guess you are now confirming as to why that's the case. It sounds like they're counting trail miles that probably shouldn't be counted yet.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the reason you get 3 separate numbers, you get the original 164. Some people will say 205, 215, and that's when you extend the original 164 to go to Dillard Ferry, which is where that bushwhack starts. So technically the trail would go until there. Mm-hmm. But as you saw from what I was sending you, a lot of it is just dirt road walking. Yeah. Not trail. It's just dirt road to dirt road to dirt road, connected by little bits of trail. And then once you get further, it starts to connect different parts of the Buffalo River Trail, which Mims had done a couple days of with her mom before we even started. Mm. So they're working on piecing them together, and it's going to be pretty cool when they do because the Buffalo River is really pretty. But I think at this point, the northern section still isn't a complete section.
So would you both advise somebody listening to this that wants good trail to potentially just skip that northern section?
The hard thing is, like, if you're going to do a bushwhack and if you're going to do off-trail hiking, you have to be familiar with it, right? Like, there are a lot of parts on just the regular blazed part where I would get lost and I'd have to go back and find the last blaze and look around and see where does this go from here. It's really well blazed during that first 164 miles, but I would say it's pretty unsafe to send someone who's looking to do a standard hike into unblazed sections.
It's one thing to navigate out west where you're above tree line and you can actually see the direction that you're going. To be in the forest, you have to have map and compass skills for that to be a safe thing.
And I'm excited to go back and do the northern section when it's done. I'd be happy to do it. I enjoyed the experience we had, but I think it's worth saying that section's not done yet. Yeah. I don't want to paint any false impressions of it.
Well, and I think the Ozark, I'm on the Ozark Highland Trail website, which is where I did all of my research before trail, and they're pretty straightforward. The Boston Mountains are the 164 miles from Lake Fort Smith to Richland Creek, which is the Woolham Ford. And then the second segment is called the Buffalo River, which is 43 miles, which is to Dillard's Ferry, which is what we were originally going to do. And it does talk about a bushwhack on the website. So I will give the website lots of props because they do say that.
Yeah. The thing is, though, like Far Out has their guide out, and the guide is 254 miles.
Yeah.
And they have a red line that goes through the whole
Just
thing.
directly into prickly bushes.
I mean, we didn't go through the bushwhack, so I don't know. But from just looking at Far Out, you might think that the red line means there's a trail there.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome once they connect it, though, because like Juliana said, I did the Buffalo River Trail, which is also on Far Out. It's 37 miles just southwest of the trail. But the Buffalo River Trail and the Ozark Highland Trail will eventually connect. I was talking to the ranger there. The section I did is farther west, but it eventually is going to connect to like where we got off at Tyler Bend Trailhead east, because the Ozark Highland Trail pretty much ends right at the Buffalo River. You're skirting at the last 40 miles or so.
Yeah.
So they're going to connect all of that. I think it's going to be really beautiful once they do.
And then once they do, that's the 250 plus mile trail.
Yes.
Okay. Let's take a step back, because I obviously was joking about Tim inspiring you into the trail. What was the inspiration for this trail? Because this is not one of the better known trails in the U.S. Prior to maybe a few months ago, I hadn't really heard you talk about it much. So I'm curious as to why this was the trail of choice for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard it about it a lot from different guests on the podcast. It's come up a couple of different times. It's a great length for a short trip. You know, when you're working a full-time job, you have to be able to get away for amounts of time that the job will let you take off. So to be able to go do a trail that's 164 miles is the perfect length. And in March, there's not many options that don't have snow, that have a weather window, that aren't closed off. So the weather we got on the OHT was really good for this time of year to be able to go do it.
Would you corroborate that?
Yeah, it was definitely good weather. We only got like 3 days of rain, but I will say it was absolutely freezing at night. It was in the 20s and 30s, and I was extremely ill prepared. I was very, very uncomfortably cold. So I'm doing the PCT Sobo in July, so this was kind of a training hike for me, and I'm glad I realized how cold I was so I can get a warmer sleeping bag for the PCT.
Yeah, what were
the
you
big
using?
takeaway.
Yeah.
I was using a 30-degree Z-Pax
Okay.
sleeping bag, which is great. I love it, but it's...
Yeah, I've heard it tends to be a little bit cooler, so that corroborates what I've heard.
Yeah, it was a little chilly.
Yeah.
Windy, too. A lot of wind at night. There were some nights we were expecting thunderstorms, and we got just heavy wind instead. And then just one thing I don't think we touched on in Tim's episode was all the water, which is river. They call them creeks. I think if something goes up to my chest, it's a river.
Yeah,
you know,
get to
like
swim.
creek is a technicality for what they're named, but we had maybe 3 to 4 a day even, where it was past the point where you want to take off your shoes and put them back on because you want to make use of daylight when you have shortened daylight hours like you do in March. You know, before we had the hour jump for daylight savings, sun was setting by 6:30. It was dark. After, it was 7:30. So we really had to make use of every hour of the day, which meant keep your pack on when you can, limit your breaks when you can, you know, just be time conscious. And so going through and not having proper time to dry off after each one, it's cold.
Yeah. I'm curious, does the time change actually affect you when you're on trail? Because I feel like in the context of your normal life, when like you're bound to work and maybe your favorite TV program happens 23 hours after the change, whatever, I could see, obviously, you lose an hour of sleep, but when you're living off of the sun and you don't have like a day-to-day normal schedule, do you actually notice the time change?
No, it just meant that the sun rose at 7:15 instead of 6:15, and it set at 7:30 versus 6:30. So it didn't make any difference, really.
Yeah.
It was really nice, though, because every single day the days got longer, and it was noticeable, you know, when
you could feel those extra 2 to 3 minutes.
You could, because like Juliana said, it was really a time crunch, you know. I wouldn't say rushed by any means, but you couldn't dilly-dally. You couldn't take a 2-hour lunch, you know. I was taking a 1-hour lunch versus like a 2 or 3 hour lunch, you know, and several shorter breaks just because, you know, it was hard terrain and the river crossings were abundant, bountiful, and frequent.
Good use of bountiful.
Yes.
Word of the trail.
Bountiful harvest and bright blessings.
That's how we greet it every day.
Yes.
What a bountiful day.
Yes.
That's one thing you'll notice on the PCT going southbound is the opposite, is that the days are getting shorter. And because you're starting so far north and you obviously end in the south, the days just feel significantly shorter by the end.
I was thinking about that too, and what a blessing it is to start in July because you have those longer days to get your body in shape. And then by the time it really starts shortening, at least you're in shape and you can crank out miles at a more efficient rate than in the beginning of the trail.
Absolutely. What is next? I'm going to steer the ship as little as possible.
Yeah, I think we'll just run you through it.
Yeah.
Give you a recount of our, 10 days of blissful trail time. So we started at Lake Fort Smith State Park. That's where the trail begins. Mims's mom, Angel, that she is. It's actually how I met Mims, was through her mom. Through her dog, actually. The dog's grown quite a bit.
My mom introduced Juliana and I on the Appalachian Trail. That's how we met.
Really?
Yeah, I think we've told it before, but I mean, I don't like talking to people on trails or ever. And
Unless it's a dog acting as the icebreaker.
Exactly. So her mom was sitting reading a book, and I was trying to, in my head, brainstorm how I would avoid talking to this person. And I saw this puppy, German Shepherd, behind her, like tiny, small puppy. And it was game over. And so then she told me Mims was hiking, and it was history from there. But yeah, her mom had gone hiking with Mims on the Buffalo River Trail a few days prior to when I was able to get out there. And they had dropped Mims's car off at where we were going to be ending, and then drove Mims back to the start of the trail where I went and I parked my car.
So wait, the car was waiting for you after the 50-mile section that you guys ended up...
So my car was at Dillard's Ferry, which is where we originally were going to go, but we stopped
30 miles earlier.
So we got a shuttle to my car. But my mom was so incredible. She not only allowed us to drop my car at the end, but we also dropped 2 resupplies. Mm-hmm. One at the Trail Angel Stan Lockwood. Highly recommend Stan Lockwood.
That's at Ozone, which is between the east and the west section.
And then we dropped another resupply cache in the middle of the woods at Ben Hur Trailhead at mile 134.5. Mm-hmm. So my mom was amazing. I mean, we could not have had those resupplies there or had a car at the end without her. So shout out to Kath. We love ya.
Yeah.
Very sweet. Are you guys caching the food in like a 5-gallon bucket, or what's the strategy there?
I put it in an earth sack and tied it to a tree, and put a garbage bag to protect all of our food.
Sure. And you just carried the earth sack the remainder of the hike?
Yeah. Yep. I just carried it the rest of the way. And it was great.
Yeah. I remember Tim mentioning that there are bears out there, but do you have to be bear conscious, or?
We were not bear conscious, but apparently there are bear. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if they were out that early or if they're still hibernating. I don't know much about like bear habits in Arkansas in March, but we didn't see any bear. I was more concerned about hogs.
Yeah, for sure.
We saw hog prints that they looked like the size of horse hooves. And we saw a skeleton. I'll find you this photo of this skeleton of a hog that was taller than me. Like, this is bigger than me. And at that point, if you come head to head with it, like, you just, like, what do? Say goodbye?
Are hogs aggressive?
Yeah, incredibly.
Yeah. Really?
You're supposed to climb a tree if you see one. Yeah. But a lot of the trees don't have low branches. Like, a lot of them are just, like, stump going up into, like, 10 feet, and then they have branches. So I was playing a game with myself where I'd, look around every few bits and see what tree would I climb. And I kind of just accepted, like, I'm pretty screwed.
Adult feral swine weigh between 75 and 250 pounds on average.
Yeah, they're big boys.
But some can get twice as large. A 500-pound hog? Fuck that.
Hog hunting, baby.
Seriously.
Yeah, so so in the beginning, like, I forgot how early the sun sets.
Run up to 30 miles per hour? That sounds like a bear.
They kind of remind me of the Arkansas version of a moose, where it sounds like, from what we were told, they just will attack for no reason.
Yeah.
So that's why they say to climb a tree. But yeah, we were both plotting what we were going to do in case we got run down by a swine.
Yeah, that's wild. A board isn't even like register or something I think about in the backcountry. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It does look like a
All
dinosaur.
the Arkansas people, like Stan and Chris, the search and rescue guy, were like, "Are you guys carrying guns?" And we're like, "Nope, not this trip."
Yeah. You got to include that photo in the Instagram roundup.
I'll send it to Mara and Rachel. But yeah, just to not get too far ahead, because I will have a little story. But when we started from Lake Fort Smith State Park, and 3 miles in, you get your first river crossing. Technically a creek, it's Frog Bayou Creek. But if it comes after a heavy rainstorm, like these creeks will often flash flood. And if they do, luckily we didn't have to deal with that. But if they do, according to Tim, we had an extra call with him after the episode we recorded. You just got to wait for it to go down. And with Frog Bayou, there's a dirt road that will go and reconnect with the trail around mile 12, I think. And so Mims's mom was great. She drove down to the creek to make sure that we could cross it before she left, just in case.
That's a good mom.
But it's also
The best mom. Well, the rangers also told her that we would not be able to cross Frog Creek. And so we looked at it and we were like, no, this is fine. And we were easily able to cross it. But the rangers had told my mom that we were not going to be able to cross it.
Yeah,
so she was going to shuttle us to, I think it's called Dockery's something.
Yeah.
Maybe mile 9.
It makes me kind of laugh to think about, because you get people from the AT who have this continuous footpath mindset, and what a buzzkill that must be to start a hike and want to thru-hike something and get 3 miles in and realize you have to hitch around and miss almost 10 miles.
Yeah.
Or wait, but there's no camping allowed during those first 3 miles. So then you got to kind of make a backup plan or start another day. So that was something where at such a close start to the beginning of the trail, you really want to plan your start date, I would say, based on times where it hasn't just rained the night before tremendously. So yeah, we got over Frog Creek. We did 7 miles the first day, just camped in the woods at a nice spot. And then the second day, we had wanted to get to, we had a plan to get to Ozone by Saturday. So on the second day, we had done, how many miles did we do the second day?
I'm pulling up
I think
my
it was
notes.
like 21 or something.
And can you give me a taste?
20.
I wrote it down
Here
too.
we go.
Can you give me a taste?
We did 21.3.
Okay,
on
yeah.
day 2?
Or 22.8, sorry.
22.8.
We did 7.4 the first day and then 22.8 the second day.
How difficult are these trail miles? What are they looking like? Are the water crossings the thing that are slowing you up the most, or is it pretty grueling miles?
So the 22.8 had 4,400 feet of gain.
Okay.
And it kind of reminded me of the beginning of the AT. I think this would be a great hike to do if you want to get in shape for the AT, but you're not ready to start the AT yet because the weather is a little warmer in Arkansas than it was for me at the start of the AT around the same. I mean, I started the AT on the 4th of March, and I started the OHT on the 7th of March, and the weather was much more favorable on the OHT. But the climbs were surprising. Like, they kicked my ass. And I was averaging 2 miles an hour throughout the whole thing, which I didn't expect. Like, I expected it to be flatter. I don't know why. So that first day when we did that 22.8, I night hiked for an hour and a half because I just hadn't anticipated. First off, I forgot the sun sets early. But I hadn't anticipated it being that hard for me. What do you think?
Yeah, the climbs were anywhere from 400 to about 1,000 feet in elevation. And I'd say the difficulty was definitely similar to the AT in Georgia, and also the trail looked like the AT. The leaf-strewn trail, and the blazes were the same. It was really cool. But I didn't struggle as much with the climbs, but they were no means easy.
Yeah.
At all.
You attribute that to just being in better shape than you were on the AT, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just going into this trail definitely in better shape.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
I like to call Mims a pack horse because she carries everything in her backpack. Everything. Like
she's carrying your stuff?
No, not my stuff. I mean, I wish, but she she just like she's got a pillow. Like, she'll just pull out stuff, like her Crocs. Like, she's got a heavy pack.
Yeah.
And she just doesn't slow down. Like
bringing
she's
Crocs
a
on the
fast,
PCT?
strong hiker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
I'm like so it's kind of a running joke, but every trail I do, which is at least one a year, my pack gets heavier. I think I was definitely a Sherpa in a past life because I'm very blessed to be very strong. I can carry the weight, and I'm not a fast hiker. I think people would consider me a fast hiker, but I'm just very steady.
Sure.
She says that, but like I there's never a time that I find her on trail.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's never a time that I catch up. Granted, I'm not in the shape I was for the AT, but not even at lunch do I catch up, you know? And
So you guys don't see each other until the evenings? Like morning
Yeah,
and
most days,
evening?
most days we just see each other at camp. Like Hurricane Creek, I stuck around for a while, and she had shown up just as I was thinking of going, which was a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get into that later, but
yeah, we'll get there.
Is that nerve-wracking? Because the way that you described it the entire time was very isolated.
No, I think it made the best experience for both of us, because on the first day she waited for me for lunch, and it for me, it puts a lot of stress on me when I'm hiking, because I feel like I can't take a break. I feel like I'm rushing. I feel like I don't get to let my body take a relax when it needs to, and then I get there and then I have to go again, and I just constantly feel like I'm rushing, which is very stressful on my end. And I don't want to speak for you, but I imagine on your end, having to just sit there and wait when you feel like going is probably frustrating as hell too.
yeah, so the first day I waited like 2.5 hours at lunch, and I still hadn't seen her, so I was getting very nervous that something had happened. But that was just the first day. Then we kind of
talked about
it and just, determined where we would camp at night, and then we would almost never see each other during the day, because I'm the same way. I think it's almost impossible to hike with anybody else, literally anybody else, because nobody's the same pace. And I like to take breaks and do yoga and meditate with the trees and like do all this stuff. And I don't want to like feel like I'm slowing someone else down or have to wait for someone either.
Right.
So it was the perfect combination of both of us to have awesome alone time during the day. But then because the trail was so desolate, so isolated, it was the best trail to hike with somebody, because we could camp together at night and share about our days.
Sure.
But it was nothing like
And
the AT, PCT, CT, JMT, where like you could easily do any of those trails alone and never hike alone.
Yeah.
But this was not the case. Very, very isolated.
And it wasn't like it was like, hey, I'm not going to see you again till camp. Like, there's nothing that would have said we can't have lunch together. But what we determined was, don't wait for me to leave lunch.
Right.
So if I was hiking faster and I was having a really good day, yeah, sure, maybe I could have seen her at lunch. I saw her at Hurricane Creek. But the part that we wanted to kind of talk about was, don't put off leaving lunch just because you're waiting for me to get there.
Mm-hmm.
If I get there and you're still there, great, that'll be fun. But if that's not the case, like, let's just make this less stressful on both of us.
Yeah.
And that worked well. But so that
Communication, it's all about communication.
The key to a good relationship.
I will
Indeed.
tell you, that first night, this is not like on the PCT I would night hike, right? And like I made a joke about the mountain lions. I just put in my headphones and call it a day, let fate decide what would happen. So on the OHT, I was like, yeah, if I have to night hike, that's fine. I don't care. Sun's setting at 6:30, I probably will. Scariest hour and a half of my life. Like you could hear things, like, because there were so many fallen leaves on the ground, you could hear animals like moving around in them, and there was one that felt like it was following me. Like you could, like, it was on the right side, it was up the hill, and I kept like every 10 seconds like turning my head both ways to check, but it seemed like a heavy animal. I could hear it moving through the leaves and I couldn't see it, and I had an hour and a half to get to camp for the mileage I was doing, and it was just freaking terrifying because
Getting stalked by a hog?
Well, that's what you think, right? Like, the hogs are out there. They're kind of aggressive. I know what to do if I see a mountain lion, right? Like, do I think I'm going to win that? No. But I know what to do. Whereas hogs, I think, like, they have, like, a plate of Jell-O in their brains. And there's just, like, there's nothing you can do to, like, reason with them, right? Like, mountain lions, you can kind of, like, reason with them and, yell at them, throw some rocks maybe, like, I don't know, stuff. Hogs, I just think they see you and they see red. is my interpretation.
They belong
of
on
it.
Benedict's.
Yeah.
That's about it.
So that was all I was thinking that whole time. And after that, it was like, I'm not night hiking.
Yeah.
After I got to camp that night, I was like, I don't want to do that again.
I bet hogs are pretty smart. They're probably assholes, like you're saying, but I know that like on the farm, the pig is considered one of the smartest animals.
Yeah, that
Ooh,
almost
that's
makes
cool.
it scarier.
I saw a pig on the first like couple weeks of the AT too, and was like completely terrified. But luckily, we did not see a pig.
Yes.
Have you guys ever encountered a story of someone being attacked by a boar?
No, I have not.
I
Not
haven't
on
either.
trail. I've read about cases where they have been for like the research for Mile by Mile. And it's just like there was a woman in Texas who like was standing on her front porch at dusk, and just a freaking group of hogs went and just murdered the shit out of her.
Woo pig!
So like stuff like that where like there's stories about them doing things like that where it's just like unprovoked, came out of nowhere and just aggressive. But I haven't heard of someone on trail having that happen, which is great.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was day 2.
Did the pigs
4 people
come
have
up?
died from feral hog attacks since the late 1800s.
Yeah.
Did Tim Ernst say anything about the pigs when you guys interviewed him?
I don't remember. When time passes, we kind of forget.
Yeah.
Yeah. What questions did you just ask?
Okay.
Then it did rain the second day. I was looking at my notes. It was supposed to rain that night, but luckily we were able to pack up a dry tents, which is a gift. But it did rain the next day, and it was pretty cold. It was. I have notes that it was very cold, but not as cold as some of the days on the AT early on.
Bless you. So yeah, give me a run through of like what was the common high out there? Was it pretty consistent?
The first day we was like 60, 70. Mm-hmm. The first day was hot.
Then the rest of the trail, the highs were like the low 50s, high 40s.
Yeah.
I think 50s might be my favorite hiking temperature.
Definitely.
Honestly. Yeah.
It was good.
I like high 40s too, and
Yeah.
sun. That's a nice.
Especially when you're climbing.
Yeah. But it was like on this trail, I was like praying for a climb every morning because I was so
Just to warm up.
cold. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, please let there be a climb. I'm freezing.
We did a pretty good job of planning where we camped at the base of the next climb.
Just because that's where water was usually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
kind
right.
of.
Is it? I imagine it's pretty humid out there. Oh, sort of a moist environment.
I didn't notice the humidity. I think it was too cold to notice.
Okay.
But
Maybe
'Cause
later
that makes the
apparently
cold
it's-
worse when it is cold outside and there is moisture in the air. It makes it much colder.
like that Midwest.
Yeah, exactly.
Chilled to the bone.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, maybe when it's later in the season it'll get more humid, but there was a lot of water. Like Far Out showed a 14-mile dry stretch from Fan Creek at mile 30 to roughly mile 45, and I took photos of the mile markers and the streams to show them because there were some that were like they
Ooh.
looked like they could be seasonal.
That's a good get the goat. Stuff that in your Triple Crown
What?
when you're expecting a dry stretch and there's water along the way.
Oh yeah, and you're just carrying all this water for
Yeah.
no reason. Yeah, so I took pictures of all the streams to send them with the mile markers so that they
I
can
don't think we
decide.
went, I'm not kidding you, more than 3 miles
Really?
ever
Yeah.
without rain. But also, one of the guys we met that's on search and rescue said that this was one of the wettest years they've ever had. So luckily, water wasn't something that we dealt with.
Yeah,
And we really only got 3 days of rain. So we were very I
lucky.
think, lucky in
Yeah.
that regard.
Yeah. What else happened that first? I'm trying to think of like the first section leading up to Ozone. So we had those waterfalls too. There's a lot of like mossy, rock cliffy, like
The waterfalls were
so pretty.
between Lake Fort Smith and Ozone.
Yeah.
The third day we did 22 miles, and it was honestly one of the best days I've ever had on any trail. It was like the best weather. I literally ate lunch on a rock in the middle of a river right on top of a waterfall, like with moss. It looked like the Lord of the Rings, the Shire, just all around you. And every day the birds were chirping more, and towards the second week the sprouts were coming out of the ground,
Yeah, a
very
lot of
much
blossoms.
like the AT
Yeah,
in
you can
March.
feel springing.
it's cool too because
Yeah.
all the
That's
water
nice.
is like we've talked about this a lot. All the
Oh,
water
yeah.
is like this really like not translucent. You can't see through it. It's like kind of like a cloudy bright bluish green color.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd been on like a quest to find out why. What we are told is that there is something that comes out of the limestone, like
a mineral
that turns it that way. But it was just so pretty. Like, if you were doing this trail in the summer and you had time to stop and swim.
Yeah.
That I was telling Mims that if I were to do this again, I would do it in the middle of the summer, which would suck for the climbs for the heat. But I would do like 10-mile days and end at like one of these waterfalls. And
here's a question: would you do it again?
Yeah, I'd do it again.
Nice. That's the ultimate endorsement, I think.
I probably wouldn't.
No.
I mean,
why?
I think that there are prettier trails out there. I enjoyed it very much so, don't get me wrong, but I probably wouldn't do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an asterisk, is that I would do it again, but I obviously would want to do other things first.
Sure.
Right. So, like, assuming I do all the hikes I want to do.
Just live to be 150, be like, well, I've already done the JMT 7 times, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like, I want to go to Europe and New Zealand and do all those trails. But it was a beautiful trail. I think if anyone's considering hiking it, the biggest takeaway was the water, both as the biggest highlight and the biggest challenge. The highlight being the beautiful waterfalls, the abundance of water, the greenery, the color of the water, and then the biggest challenge being the river crossings, creating hell for your feet, basically, like Blister City.
So the water is that cool color because of the mineral runoff. Is there any soot in the water? Like, do you have to worry about your filter clogging at all?
No. It was great.
That's Comes
nice.
out clear.
Yeah.
Great quality water.
Here, I'll show you this one. This is one of the waterfalls. Oh, where is it? Just that around every corner. You just see those everywhere.
That's awesome.
So there were a few, I mean, doesn't make much sense to go through every single river crossing because there were so many, but there were ones that ranged from ankle deep to chest deep.
How many times would you estimate that you were in a water crossing that was above your knee?
There were plenty that were, I would say there were several that, for me, 5-1, that were, my thighs were wet. But
like one a day? More than one a day? Less than one a day?
One every other day. We were only out there for 10 days. I'd say, again, I'm 5'1". I'd say for me, I had maybe one every other day that went above my knees but below my waist. I'd say there were two. There were two that went past my belly button. And neither of those were fast flowing. And so that was kind of the gift of it, is that they're either around your knee in depth, knee to thigh in depth for me at 5'1", and fast, or they were above my belly button and slow. And that I don't mind, because it's just like wading through, a slow moving creek, which didn't feel scary. There was only one crossing that I was genuinely scared during. And apart from that...
Which one was that?
Hurricane Creek.
Okay. And that's the one that was chest deep? Mims is shaking her head right now.
That was one of the scariest experiences I've ever had hiking, was Hurricane Creek.
Yeah, and we're
jumping the timeline.
We'll get there, because that's going to be after ozone. But that one was only, for me, my deepest was knee to thigh. But it was just fast. Yeah. It was fast, and we'll get there. We'll get there. But
yeah, and I'm 5'5", and I probably only had 3 or 4 that were above mid-thigh.
Okay.
They were pretty shallow.
Manageable. Yeah.
It also depends on where you choose to cross them.
Right.
Because,
Definitely.
like, even at the end of the original OHT, where you're supposed to cross Woolham if you're finishing there, or you cross Richard Creek if you're continuing, where the trail looks like it crosses Richard Creek on Gut Hook or far out, and even where there's, like, a little double flagged blaze that's, like, a impromptu thing put there, I mean, it looks like you're swimming across it. Like, my feet wouldn't even touch the bottom. And then you keep going upstream, and you find spots where when I crossed it, it was below my knees.
Yeah, that's definitely something to consider. Like, where the trail is blazed to cross the river is almost never where you should cross. You should always walk upstream, because it gets shallow, or even like 30 yards up the trail. But where the trail was blazed, most river crossings, was probably the most dangerous spot. Richland Creek and Hurricane Creek, where it was blazed, I would strongly encourage people to not cross, especially those two rivers.
Yeah. So
walk upstream.
Were you guys doing those independently then? Okay. Were you crossing at the trail, or were you going upstream?
For the most part, upstream. The only one that I had difficulty with we're jumping the timeline, was Hurricane Creek. And that's because it was so loud that I couldn't hear what Mims was saying. And so she's on the other side on this rock drying off, and she's telling me, don't cross here. And she's pointing with her hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Whatever you do,
hand,
not
just
cross
don't
where
cross
I
here.
crossed.
And so I'm thinking I can't hear her. I'm thinking she's pointing and telling me I crossed down there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, weird, downstream, okay. And I like took a stroll down. I walked about 10 minutes down trying to find a low enough spot, and where it finally looked manageable, the other side was cliffs, so I wouldn't be able to get back up. So I came back up, and I'm like, okay, if she crossed here somewhere, where is it? And I found this one spot that looked about knee deep, and I was like, it must have been here. I can't figure out where else it would have been. But the problem with Hurricane Creek in that spot is that a lot of the rocks on the bottom are flat sheets, and they're got a little bit of mossiness on them. And what I learned from walking down the stream, kind of walking on the ones that were above water, was I kept slipping on them.
Yeah.
And so when I got in the water, with the flow that it was pushing at, it was moving my feet. And so I'd go to slide it forward to take a step, and it would slide down. And when I got kind of to the middle, there were 3 times I tried to cross it.
Are you doing this barefoot or
Sneakers?
In your sneakers.
Trying to get as much traction as I can. Sneakers on.
It was funny because she was on one side of the river, and we couldn't hear each other where I was sitting, but I walked downstream, and so did she. So then we were able to communicate, and I was like, I don't know where you're going to cross, but do not cross where I crossed.
Yeah.
So we went up and down the river looking at spots, but even from her vantage point and mine, we couldn't see the bottom of the river, so there was no way to tell like what would be a safer place for her to cross than where I did.
Right.
So eventually it was, I think the rule of thumb is always go upstream.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, the only reason I hadn't was because I thought that it was like, hey, go down. That's where I crossed. But the part was when I would get to the middle, I would get close enough to the middle, and the water was pushing harder in the middle. And each time I got stuck because it was good we recorded that episode, the PCT episode with Ned Tibbetts beforehand, because I was kind of keeping myself calm by reminding myself stuff we talked about for those river crossings in that episode. One of which was, wear your shoes so you have as much traction as you can. And the other was from the first interview where they were saying, that mindset of don't do something you can't undo.
Right.
And so as I was going, there were parts where it was like, if I might be able to put my foot down and get it secured for this next step, but it's getting increasingly harder for me to turn around because I'm sliding. And so when I slide, then I'm facing the current, and it's difficult. I don't think if I fell, I would have been in a situation where I would have died. Part of me at one point during it was just frustrated and considering just fuck it, bail on this, wash down a bit, aim for the other side. Good thing is there is a bypass. I could have, and this is why, we didn't feel like we had to wait for each other, was because I could have just gone and hiked back and done the bypass that circumvents it, which would have added a few miles. I was telling
every hiker that we crossed, I was like, do not cross that creek, take the bypass. Yeah. It's too dangerous.
How much distance
still
does it
a few miles.
A few miles. Yeah.
But at the end of the day,
it doesn't.
It
actually cuts off to mile 113. So I think the bypass is at 108, and it shoots you out at 113. So it's not. It doesn't add extra mileage. I think it actually cuts it off.
Okay, well that's good to know.
Good info.
But so what had happened was I ended up just going upstream, and what I was looking for from what didn't work where I was trying was the sheets of rocks. Mm-hmm. So I was looking, it's funny, I have a video where I'm looking for where the rocks are more rock shaped. And then you hear me in the video go, fucking idiot, all rocks are rock shaped. Talking to myself. But I was looking for those smaller rocks that you could walk across and not be on sheets. And we found that upstream. And it was honestly not that bad of a crossing. It really wasn't where I found, but it just goes to reinforce you could have a completely different experience than someone else on the same section of the same river just based on choosing a different spot.
Yeah.
And Mims crossed where the trail crossed. Tell us about that, because that was
hands down top 5 scariest experiences I've ever had on a trail. It was, so I crossed, and I don't have experience crossing rivers. I just don't. So I'll throw that out there. But where the trail crossed, where it was blazed to cross, was this rapidy, waist-deep monstrosity of water.
I'm looking at the video right now. This is intense.
So you can see in the video, halfway across, there's this giant boulder.
Yeah.
But I had to cross the first half of that in like literal rapids. And I was like, it's so funny because when I was in it doing it, I wasn't that scared. I was just hyper focused.
Yeah.
But as soon as I reached that middle rock and I literally was able to climb onto it and then rock hop the rest of the way, I looked back on it and I was like, that was so incredibly dangerous. If I would have fallen, I probably would have died. Like it was that bad.
Yeah.
Like the current was so strong. It was like a rapidy waterfall right after it. Like it was very, very scary. So that was a good learning experience for me,
sure.
Especially having no experience crossing rivers. I'm glad I had that before.
Yeah,
The PCT, even though I'm doing it SOBO, I don't think I'll have like the river crossing problems in the Sierra, but it was a good learning experience.
The Sierra by September should be no issue for you.
Should be cruisy.
Yeah, there'll be a couple places in Washington where it'll be slightly sketch, just based on my experience. The snow level is a little bit different. I think it actually might have been higher the year that I did it, but I think you're starting earlier, so it's probably going to be similar, would be my guess. But having that experience is good. It'll just force you to be like ultra selective before you make your first step.
I think
Yeah.
that was a thought that I had a lot during this hike, was after having done that second PCT episode where we talked a lot about river crossings and how, certain accidents that came up in that episode could have been avoided had they been more, diligent about where to cross. I think this would be a great training hike. I said for the AT because the hills are the same, but I also think for the PCT because even though most of these rivers aren't dangerous, and it's like either low and fast or high and slow, apart from that one, I think it gives you a lot of understanding of how the water can change just even a couple minutes upstream. Mm-hmm. And I think it helps you understand the importance of selecting where to cross in a setting where it's very low risk, right? Mm-hmm. Like in most of these crossings, if I had fallen over, I would have just been sitting there while water's pushing me, like that. It would have been nothing. And I think to be able to get that understanding of how the depth can change, how the speed can change, how what's at the bottom can change in such low risk settings can make it so that if you do go out and do something like the PCT where the rivers are going to be heavier, you kind of have that as a foundation to base your decisions out there on.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a great one to...
I just can't wrap my head around why in God's green earth they decided to have the trail cross Hurricane Creek where they did. That was the most dangerous part of the trail. Like, why couldn't they have put it 50 yards up where you crossed? Like it just was bizarre, or at least had a sign there that says, if the river's too deep, like walk upstream. I think where they chose to have the trail cross was like mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
The other thing that we have to think about too, though, is like the water changes every day, and we had just gotten that rain. So maybe it doesn't look like that on other days. Maybe later in the season when it's less wet, it looks different. Like we only know the day that we saw it on, so it's hard to know like even what it looks like right now.
That's a good point. If it goes a month without raining, is that even something that most people
probably not
think about?
Maybe it would be like a great place for a rock hop, I don't know.
And we were looking at Far Out, and it was fun to just see the comments, and like other popular times to hike seemed from the comments was May and then November. And it seems to be way less water in those times. Like half of the water crossings they were like or half of the water sources they were
Bone
like
dry.
No water here, blah blah. And we had water all over.
Yeah. Did you notice any sort of game trail upstream there? Like, because oftentimes if there's a better place to cross, you'll see someone has at least blazed a path.
And that was part of why I thought that people were going downstream there, was because there was a game path. And so it looked like at a lot of these crossings, it looked like you could kind of tell something has decided not to go here and gone this way instead.
And Hurricane Creek's really popular with the locals, so there was a lot of there were campsites all along the river, and it seems like a popular local spot too.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But before we got to Hurricane Creek, we had our first half day Saturday. We did a quick 11 miles to the Ozone trailhead, and there was a comment on Gut Hooks that said this guy named Stan owns Panther Cabin that he lets hikers rent out. And we had called him before the trail started to ask if, we could stay there. And he was like, oh, no, it's booked up, the whole weekend. And I was like, there is that many people out there hiking already? And he's like, no, people do other stuff down here. Like, and it was the first time it kind of occurred to me that there's other hobbies that people do.
Yeah. Yeah, we lost to a fly fishing podcast.
Yeah. Well, there was some foul play there, I think. But yeah, so Stan still, was able to, give us a place to sleep, help us out. He picked us up from the trailhead. And him and Mims connected, I would say, obviously much more than I did. She's a social butterfly, but
we had
you going steady?
A divine connection, Stan and I. First of all, he picks. So I get to the trailhead, the parking lot first, and he had this smorgasbord of booze set up. He had like a lime and a lemon cut up with wedges, tequila, because he asked what my favorite type of alcohol was, and I was like, I love a tequila. Yeah. And he had beer too. So we did like 3 shots of tequila like as soon as I arrived, and I think any other hiker can understand this when you've been on trail hiking
30 years
maybe.
Yeah, like you get drunk pretty quickly. So we go back to his place, and he's giving me a tour of the property and stuff like that, and I still hadn't eaten lunch or anything like that.
That's funny.
And so then he's like, hey, do you mind, I'm gonna step outside for a second and smoke a cig. And I was like, well, you're not gonna offer me some, Stan? So he's like, I was just being a gentleman, I didn't want to smoke inside with you. And I was like, I'll take a couple puffs. So we light up some cigs, and then Juliana texts me and is like, hey, I'm here at the trailhead. Yeah. So I was like, okay, Stan, we gotta saddle up and head back.
I'm gonna play this audio.
I'm already toasted.
Listen to this. This is me waiting. I have no idea what to expect, mind you. I'm just like, this nice guy Stan's gonna come pick me up with our friend Mims. Mims head out the window smoking a cig. I'm like, what the hell is happening? So granted, he did lay out the same smorgasbord for me. I was having really bad acid reflux the first few days of trail. So for that reason, I was like, it's best that I don't drink tequila right now. But also,
that was caused by anything in particular?
It started before I started hiking, so I think I just ate a bunch of bad comboed foods beforehand. I also told Mims later, I was like, one of us had to make sure we weren't getting roofied.
But Stan so I had met Stan before when I was with my mom, when we dropped off our resupply at Stan's, because there's no store really around. Mm-hmm. And he does actually provide food for hikers. Yeah. But since my mom and I were already in the area, I wanted to drop some good food. Also, it was Juliana's birthday, so like I dropped off a cake, and there were other stuff I wanted to drop off, like just because we were there. So I had met Stan. Were you guys
always intending on staying there on Chaunce's birthday?
No, well, we stayed a few days before.
Yeah, a few days before, but I couldn't pack out a cake, so I was like, we'll do the cake at Stan's.
Not with that attitude.
But yeah. But I had met Stan before, and I mean, we clearly have been reincarnated in past lifetimes together, because there was this immediate just like knowing between us and this connection. Weird. Like we saw each other for the first time, and I was like, I think this was like the third thing I'd ever said to him. I was like, oh my gosh, Stan. I was like, how many lifetimes have we been together? And he's like, oh my gosh, I know. He's like, you're such a spark of divine light. And I was like, no, you are. And so Stan and I were messaging. I was just third wheeling.
Yeah, I was third wheeling the whole time. But
I love you, Stan.
He was a really cool dude. He grew up in Carmel in California. He's played, what were some of the bands that he was saying he played in? It was like Journey, but not the original Journey, but like when they had to replace a guy, like then Stan went in, like just really cool.
What's his instrument?
Past history. What's his what?
Instrument?
He plays guitar.
Yeah, and he had a piano. So very musical guy.
I'm glad that the feeling was mutual, because I noticed in the picture that Chaunce sent that he was getting very grabby on your side of the he was like gripping your shoulder.
Yes, very
like an eagle grabbing its prey or something.
Passionate. We're now known as Stanley's Angels.
Yeah, we're Stanley's Angels.
We had matching. His mother Norma passed in 2017, and so luckily we had these nightgowns of Norma's, so the three of us wore Norma's matching nightgowns post shower because we didn't have any clothes.
I noticed that in the photo too. It looked like a hippie commune.
Oh, it was. It was.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was. I mean, it was certainly interesting. Guy got.
Tell them about Big Bertha.
Oh my God, he had this like $15,000 massage chair that had it looked like it belonged in like a spaceship. This panel of just buttons, and you could flap it down, and it had more buttons, all these settings. And I did not leave this chair. I spent a majority of my time,
especially mid-hike,
in Bertha.
Better?
Oh, it was so nice. It was a really nice massage chair, so it felt like a masseuse was actually getting in there. It was incredible.
I've never been
These
one.
outfits are amazing.
I've never been one for like I need a massage chair. Like I sit in them when I get a pedicure. They're fine.
Yeah.
This thing was different.
Yeah.
So me and Bertha, she was my real pal that weekend.
I bet.
This is her control panel.
Damn.
Yeah, you can make custom settings and everything. And when she squeezes, it's nice. He had a donkey. He had some goats. At one point, we had to go find them because they like ran off to the neighbors. So we had to chase the donkey back home.
We had to go find the farm animals.
Yeah.
So the model of this thing is not the Bertha. Is that something that you named it, or that?
No,
Stan...
that's what he calls it.
Okay.
So he was the highlight of the trail for me.
Yeah.
I mean, and people always are for me.
Sure.
I think the trail's always incredible just to be immersed in nature. It's such a spiritual experience out there. But the people and Stan was, I mean, he's a true angel. He was texting me today about all these hikers that he rescued. Remember that guy, apparently his name is Will, that was clearly needing someone to talk to because he had been alone for a while?
Yes.
And was very interested in Far Out.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently
This guy
Stan picked him up and brought him from Ozone to Lake Fort Smith. So
Did
he got off trail. And then also the two brothers that we passed at the campsite.
Yeah.
He picked up as well. So he's just so sweet. He rescues all of these people, and there's really not a big community on the OHT. And Stan is like ideally located in the center of the trail where he could really go anywhere and pick anyone up.
He does search and rescue.
Is this for people that are getting lost on trail, or the water crossings become too much and they get stranded, or what?
Any search and rescue.
Okay.
So I forgot who she was talking about at first. We saw 7 total people. This guy, I saw him right on the other side of Hurricane, and he was like, whoa. He's like, he saw I was wearing headphones. He's like, what are you listening to? And I was like, what? And he's like, what are you listening to? And I was like, a podcast.
Radio.
And he was like, what
The Tribe.
like, what specifically? He's like, I haven't heard another voice in days. And I was like, this is like, you got to go talk to someone, because I'm not the one who's going to help you here, really.
And
truly.
I'm the social one, you know. I'll stop and talk to anything that has a pulse, you know. And I stopped and talked with this guy, and he was cute too. I was like, oh, this guy's cute. Like, I think I could enjoy a couple minutes with him. And then I was like, oh God. And so I was like, oh, my friend Juliana's right behind there. She can tell you where she crossed Hurricane Creek. Like, she'd be, don't cross where I crossed, blah, blah, blah.
So he asked where he should cross, and I pulled up for out, and he's like, whoa, you've got this app too. And I was like, yeah. Here, I'll show you a video of what it looked like where I crossed. That would be where I recommend. I explained the rock sheet thing. And he's like, wow, you have so many videos. You just like, you got so many photos on your phone. You've got so many. And I'm like, you need to stop right now.
You know, I think going back to like, if you ask me like, would I do this trail again? I think like the main reason that I'm going to say no is because I really missed the community of people.
Yeah.
Like the trail conditions were similar to the AT and it was definitely more beautiful than the AT in the beginning, just because of all the waterfalls and the color of the water. But it was so isolated. Like I was so grateful to have Juliana there so we could camp together and like share space together. But like this was a very lonely trail.
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, definitely download a horde of podcasts or audiobooks or whatever before you go, because I had a constant stream of something in my ears, which is also kind of why I like that we don't hike together, because I would rather listen.
And I hiked in silence for like 3 days straight, so I think that's where everyone's different.
Yeah. Oh, but okay, so Ozone was its own experience. Like I feel like I left the universe for 24 hours at Ozone.
He was so generous.
Really,
Stan opened up his home to us. He let us I had brought like pizza and wings, so he let us cook that. Then we made pancakes and eggs in the morning, and his other buddy Chris and his daughter Alyssa came over, Chris is another search and rescue gentleman.
Head medic guy, right?
Yeah, head medic, has been in the Marines, has done all sorts of work out west.
Mims was drooling.
Oh my God, yeah.
I had to pick her jaw up off the floor and give it back to her.
Yeah, he reminded me of Yukon on the Appalachian Trail, who I was also in love with. So I was just like, oh my gosh, this mountain man saving people's lives.
Yeah. Sounds like a commune in a lot of regards.
Yeah, it was
Where the cult leader becomes the. Never mind.
Stan, absolutely well-meaning guy.
But it felt like we were there for like a year, but we were literally there for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he showed us Panther Cabin, which if anyone's in the area,
It was so
definitely
nice.
stay there. So amazing.
Yeah.
If you like to cook, like he was well appointed with every spice, including everything bagel spice, which, I mean, that's just a luxury.
Yeah. It's
But
Panther
his
Cabin.
cabin's
Is this
amazing.
rented out via Airbnb or through?
Yes.
Okay.
Or through him directly.
Yeah, it's there. His info is on like a comment and gut hook or far out. You can find it.
Well, it's funny, and it's really a testament to Stan, because when Juliana and I like to take zeros, we really like to have our alone time and like have it just be the two of us, because we both like to just walk around naked and eat food and like not have to talk
We
to
have some
anyone else.
fucking weird zeros.
We have some, we're on the same page with our zeros.
Yeah.
And it's just a testament to Stan how amazing that stay was, because normally we would be like, there's no way we're staying with somebody we don't know, you know?
It was worth keeping your clothes on for.
Well,
Yes,
like
it was.
usually when people do laundry at like a location, like if they get a chance to wash their clothes, they'll put on like their town clothes. Like if it's just the two of us, we just don't put on clothes.
No.
It's like just like a comfort level thing, I think. But that's how it was at the end of the trail. We stayed in an Airbnb and I was naked for half of it.
Oh, yeah.
You
got to air out, too. It was a wet trail. Like, the
Sure.
skin just needed some air,
Let
you
it
know?
breathe.
Yeah. Okay, so we leave Ozone on Sunday.
Then it was Hurricane Creek, which we already kind of
We covered that. Tuesday was my birthday. Did anything happen on Monday?
I have a note that we hiked through the most beautiful cedar forest the day after we left Stan's.
We did get some NorCal vibes.
We couldn't get a fire started because it was too wet.
Oh, yeah, I remember we tried to do that.
Yeah, then the next day was
Next day was my
Hurricane
birthday.
Creek. And then your birthday!
This one was amazing because, like, so we were waking up before the sun would rise every day. When the daylight savings thing happened, we just set our alarms back by an hour.
Is that to make the miles, or so you could see the sunrise, or what?
Miles.
To make the miles,
Yeah, make most use of our daylight. And so it was cold before the sun would rise. Like, it was hard.
in the 20s that night.
Yeah. And so my birthday, I wake up, Mims had made me a hot chocolate to wake me up with, which was, like, I almost cried, I think. So birthday started on a great note. And I have a birthday story that is a poop story.
Yes.
That will go down in history in my brain.
What a
I'm ready.
birthday it was.
I'm ready.
Yeah, so 31, what a time. We have a climb coming up in the morning. We had walked through this campsite that was like a popular weekend destination, I'd say. There were a lot of RVs and like people in big 8-person tents, just like a total out of context with the rest of the trail spot that you hiked through. And I had seen this guy packing up tent just after it, and so I thought, okay, Zach's we got a camera.
Yeah, but I want the up close and personal.
Okay.
I want to see your face changing colors.
So,
Like a mood ring.
So I passed this guy. He's packing up his tent. I think he's probably going the other way. I don't think much of it. I go up this climb.
His name is Jack.
He didn't catch up to me on the climb, which confirmed in my head he's probably going the other way, because anyone can catch me on a climb in my physical state. But doesn't catch me. So then it kind of flattens out a bit, and because there's so much water, like, you really have to plan where you're going to use the bathroom kind of well, because you don't want to go too close to a water source. And I had been stopped up the whole first week of the trail. Nothing but pee. Whole first week. And a birthday gift, I felt another sensation, different from pee, where it was like I've got to, use the bathroom. Now. And it was kind of like loose forest, like spread apart trees, not much density, nowhere to really hide. And for me, it was like, there's no one fucking out here. We've seen, like, at that point, we'd seen probably 4 people. And so, like, what really do you need coverage for, right? Like, you just got to be far enough away from the trail. So I picked a, tree to stand behind. Wasn't going to do anything. But I just picked that tree because it looked nice and it was far enough away from the trail. And it was, it was still pretty close to the trail, but it was far enough to make it LNT. And so I, started going to the bathroom. And there comes Jack. And he gives me a little wave with his head down because he sees me and he sees me see him. And I am just like, my first initial thought is panic and like pull your pants up ASAP. This man can see you taking a shit. And then like embracing my 31st year, I thought, well, that just makes it embarrassing. If you get embarrassed, then it makes it embarrassing. Why not just like act like it's not even fazing you and make him feel weird about it? So I didn't move. I didn't stop. I didn't move. I didn't pull up my pants.
Did you acknowledge him?
Yeah, I gave him a head nod, said, how's it going? And just kept pooping. And
so how far is he from you at this point?
So the tree is here, the trail is here, and so he can see me when he's coming from the side. He can't see me when he's directly in front because of the tree blocks, and then directly all that way, he knows I'm here, and he could have seen me if he turned around again. Yeah. So he's doing his best to not look,
right.
And I'm doing kind of like a power flex by not doing anything on my end to mitigate his discomfort.
Mm-hmm. Just keep pooping.
I thought that was kind of the best way to own the situation because then, like, it looks like I don't care.
Yeah.
And, like, to find a person, a female, shitting in the woods who just is not fazed by a stranger seeing them doing it and continues, I would think is a pretty wild thing. So I decided to try to embrace that persona. And then we started leapfrogging each other for the next couple of miles. So he was off to the side putting shoes back on after one, so I didn't talk to him. And then the next one I was eating lunch and he had crossed the river and I knew I would have to talk to him. And like if I was to be that person who was unfazed, I'd have to continue the charade of being unfazed. So he came up to me when I was eating lunch because he had crossed the river and he was like, hey, sorry about before. I didn't mean to walk up on you by that. And I was like, it's no big deal. I just like started making light chit chat while eating a tuna sandwich. He was doing like 13 miles a day. He was a really nice guy who just happened to see me pooping in the woods, and it was something. Never had that happen before.
A birthday blessing.
A birthday blessing, especially on a trail with so few people, to have the, one time in a week that I was able to push movement through my bowels be the same time I see a person.
Yeah.
It's just a true gift. Truly.
For that to happen on your birthday is extra special because I feel like that's a thing that every backpacker has encountered, but like on your special day, come on.
Yeah, on my special day.
Extra special.
Extra special. So thank you, Jack, for just being a part of 31. Yeah, that was...
Was it like a disastrous poop? Because you mentioned you were backed up. Was it like something where he could hear and smell from?
No, it would have been on the firmer side of the scale, that number scale we talk about.
Yeah.
It was... it would have looked like deer pellets, I think, if you were to see it. Obviously, you wouldn't because I buried it, but yeah, no, nothing noisy. Just a powerful.
I love for someone that detests poop stories so much. You have more than anybody that I
know. It's the gift of life. It's the gift.
The gift of this podcast.
Yes. Well. Yeah. So that was my birthday, and then I got to camp. And Mims, like, I thought the hot chocolate was my gift. She had packed out these, like, cookie sandwiches that had frosting in the middle. Cookie cake is my favorite cake of all time. And she had packed out these cookies with frosting in the middle and sprinkles from, where did you even get them?
Walmart.
Well, I, again, could have cried. I thought I was done. I thought I had all my gifts. I thought the hot chocolate and Jack were my 2 gifts. And she whips out these cookies, and I just, like, sat there just, like, in heaven. It was the best tasting cookie. I think I said that to you. This is one of the best tasting cookies I've ever had in my entire life. So, yeah, 31 was great. And then...
We also picked up I picked up our resupply that we had cached in the
Yes.
woods that day.
Oh, yeah, the birthday gift continued because she
yeah.
picked up mine, too, and she carried it to camp.
So 2
Absolute
resupplies in 10 days. That's pretty nice. So you're
Yeah.
carrying like 3 days at a time, 3 to 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were, I mean, because when we did the JMT, from Mammoth to Yosemite, or from Mammoth to Whitney,
We had a 10-day and a 7-day.
10-day and 7-day.
That's heavy. With a bear canister.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was way too heavy.
Yeah.
So we knew we could do it, but it was like, if we don't have to, why do it?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
So we didn't.
Carry as little stuff as possible.
Yeah.
And that was such a cool day. Like, it was a good birthday day for you, for me as well. After I had picked up our resupply cache in the woods, because I had stashed it, so obviously I was going to go retrieve it as well. But I had met this guy right after that had hiked the AT in 2019 and started 2 days before Juliana, which was, I started the AT on March 8th, Juliana March 4th, and this guy March 2nd. And his name is Ninja Mouse. And we ended up talking for like 20 or 30 minutes and ended up knowing a ton of the same people and actually had hiked with several of the same people because he finished at the end of August and I finished at the end of July, and we both started at the same time. So there was enough of an overlap where we both had hiked with the same people.
Small world.
So it was so nice because, like I said, like I was really missing people out there, and just talking with him was so awesome. Just, I mean, who would have thunk, you know, in the middle of the OHT, out of anyone, there's this guy that hiked the AT the same year as us and knew the same people that I had hiked with.
Yeah.
So it was such a cool day.
Yeah.
It was really, really cool.
Yeah, he was stoked when he got to see me because Mims had told him that I started the 4th, and I think he might have been expecting the same kind of excited conversation out
Well,
of
I
me,
told him to
which
tell you happy birthday.
which I didn't deliver on. Yes, I was happy for the happy birthday, but I was like, oh, cool. We must have passed each other. Have a great hike.
Yeah.
Like, just not conversational at all.
Yeah, it's funny. Neither of us actually met him on trail.
Yeah, I don't remember him.
Yeah.
So what day did you guys finish?
17th.
17th.
St. Patty's
Okay, so
Day.
you guide me through between your birthday, the 14th, and the end of the trail.
We had a little more rain. We planned a half day one day when we knew it was going to rain because we didn't want to be hiking in it. We had, the mileage to spare. So we rearranged the miles a bit to not hike in the rain. So we had a half day where we just laid in the tents and ate.
The day after your birthday was, I'm looking at my notes, was very, very rocky. Like, there were parts of this trail where it was all covered in leaves from the previous season. And it was like a combination of leaves and just rocks. So there was no real trail. So every step was like very dangerous. You didn't know what you were stepping in because the leaves were covering the trail. And both of our feet hurt so badly that day because it was like 6 miles of straight up rock. But we passed Richland Campground, which was really cool. I stopped and threw my trash away and had a break there. Richland Campground was awesome.
I will say for the campgrounds, there were a lot that we passed where people had taken the effort to make these stone chairs around fireplaces. And I feel like I saw like one of them on the PCT, but there were like 10 different setups of these. It was super cool.
How many established campgrounds are there like that?
Enough.
Yeah. And are they free to camp at?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like finding a campground on the AT. It's just like it's not like anything fancy.
Before March 15th,
Didn't you say you ditched your
they're
trash?
free. I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's trash.
There were bear
there?
cans, trash cans.
Yeah.
The like Richland Campground was an established campground that like people with cars could access. Those you have to pay for if it's after March 15th, because my mom and I stayed at those when I did the Buffalo River Trail. But because it was before March 15th, we didn't have to pay. But we didn't stay at Richland Campground.
I thought you were asking
we
about
camped
the stone,
at the trail.
I thought you were talking about the stone seats that people had made around campfires. Those were at like the random in the wood ones.
Got it.
Yeah, the rocks were, I mean, it was tough on the feet. It was really, I've never had, and I was meaning to talk about my shoes because I wore Hoka's. I don't know which model, and I've never worn Hoka's before on trail, and I'm going straight back to Ultras.
Yeah, your feet look really fucked up.
So blisters, I can't blame on the Hoka's as much as like I'd love to be like, it was because of them. We wore our shoes on for these water crossings on purpose. And just day after day after day after day of that, especially when there's also rain, you're hiking through, your feet are wet. And when your feet are wet and you're hiking, you're going to get blisters. And so it was just the blisters, that's just the conditions that we were in. But I've got this weird bump, and I showed it to you before the episode, on the back of my heel that feels like bone, but is not. Like, it can't be because it wasn't there before the trail. And it's just like my foot is fucked up. And just like I wore slippers here because I haven't been able to wear shoes. And so I don't think Hokas are for me for trail. I think I like the zero drop. I like the ultras. If it's not broke, don't fix it. It was fun to try them. But I think part of it was all the rockiness that Mims is talking about.
Yeah, and I've worn Hokas on every trail that I've ever hiked, and I've never once had a problem with blisters. And I think Hokas are the best shoes in the world, and I still stand by that because I've never had blisters before except for this trail, and it was definitely because of the water.
Yeah.
So, again, I think the shoes, I need a heel-to-toe drop.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't.
Yeah.
So I think that I don't think it was Hoka's fault that we had blisters.
No, the blisters I won't blame on it, but this weird bump on the back of my foot, this like protrusion, it's not a blister. It's like something's fucked up about the back of my heel.
Yeah. Yeah, with footwear, there's a lot of moving pieces. It's the shape of the footbed, the depth of the midsole.
I don't think there's a right or wrong. It's just
very individual.
Your foot, you know, you can't, there's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
Well, it feels, like when you find something that works so well so fast, like I feel like I just like found ultras so quickly and they just worked perfectly that it's like, why not try something different? And then you try something different and you kind of realize, oh, maybe I just got lucky in finding what was right for me quickly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But yeah, then we had
What Hoka do you use out of curiosity?
I use a Speed Goat.
Yeah, I love the Speed Goat.
Yeah, me too. Every trail.
Yeah.
And actually in my day-to-day life too, I wear Speed Goats for everything. Yep. Actually, see these? These are the shoes I brought on the HT.
I like that colorway even better.
Oh, it's cool. I've never seen this one.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yours are cool too. I love those. Yeah.
We're just hoking out over here.
Yeah.
But I think, the last real note, we took the day before we got off trail, which was, again, we didn't think this was going to be the day before we got off trail. But the day before we got off trail, we knew that there was rain coming. So we did 11.6 miles and had the best. We were both like giggling like little schoolgirls because we were so happy to just both be in our tents horizontal eating and not hiking in the rain because we were both so destroyed at that point. And then like it was so funny she made like a funny comment the night before, like, oh, when you get to the car, like come back and pick me up at a road crossing, haha. And I'm like, oh yeah, haha. So then the next morning we both wake up and it started as a joke, she was like, oh, something about like getting off trail early. And then I look at the map and I was like, actually we're crossing under Highway 65 in 7 miles, and Tim Ernst's father-in-law runs Sassafras shuttles. And I was like, and I had service for the first time all trail. I was like, I think this is just the universe. So I was like, I'm going to shoot him a text and give him a call and see if he could pick us up at that highway. And if not, we can still get off trail because we can hitch to my car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I talked to, so we both were like, let's do it. And we both shook on it. We both committed, like, we're definitely going to get off trail. And so we were both so happy because both of our tents had blown down the night before. It was windy and cold. And so then, what's his name? Ron, Tim's father-in-law, the shuttle driver, calls me back and goes, hey, there's actually a place I can pick you up before Highway 65 called Tyler Bend Trailhead. And there's a warm visitor center and there's a paved road that I can get to. And it's like 1.3 miles off trail, a road walk to the visitor center. And that was only 5 miles from us. So I called Juliana and I was like, I've got another piece of good news. So we only walked like 7 miles that day, or 6 miles, something really short.
Yeah.
And got to Tyler Bend Visitor Center, and he met us with hot coffee, and we both
He had
changed.
Tim's books in the back of the seats. It was cute.
That's sweet.
And he stopped us by McDonald's and the
and he
gas station so we could get hot chocolate.
Tim had a love story of how he met his wife that we should have gone through on the podcast. I'm not going to try to recount it, but it was great. He told us tales the whole time. But I was texting you about it, where it was like once we crossed Richland Creek, where you would either turn left for Woolham and end the 164 miles or go on to the northern section, that's kind of where it felt like the trail ended, because the blazes changed. It started being marked BRT. The blazes became like yellow and white instead of just the white ones. And it really did feel like, I was telling Mims this, it felt like we were on a different trail, but it also, I was getting so pissed off at these dirt roads because A, I don't care for a dirt road, but B, like she was saying with the rocks, like you're just like rolling your ankle left and right to walk on dirt roads, and the gut hooks markers are literally broke down car, old house, you know, falling down barn. And I was texting you during that time where I was like, look, a shed, you know, where I was just like, get me the fuck off this trail. Like, I feel like I finished.
Yeah.
I feel like I did, you know, I did what I wanted to do, which is that original section. I would have loved to go all the way to Dillard's, but once I started to see what it looked like, I just didn't care. You know, it was like, I'd rather come back and do the northern section as a whole once it's done and blazed and, you know, like not on dirt roads. Dirt roads just don't do it for me.
Well, it's funny because Tim had said that we would be some of the first people to do the 205-mile segment, you know, because the Boston Mountains are the 164-mile, and then there's the Buffalo River segment, 43, some of which is a bushwhack. But I remember he briefly was like, oh, you guys will be the first people to do like that 205 miles. And then the closer we got, I think the more we understood that, you know?
And so just
there's a
like
reason why other people aren't doing it.
Just as like the OHG, just like giving us a little like kiss goodbye, like a bye, have fun, like come back, you know. We're on the dirt road. There's 5 miles we're doing this day. And I will never understand why this happens, but this dirt road just fades out at one point into a fucking river. And like repicks up on the other side. And this thing was the deepest of them all.
Yep.
I touched the bottom of my boobs, and it was so cold. And at that point, like, I was gonna take off my pants. I took off my pants for the other deep one, but it was like, I'm gonna end up putting on my pajamas as soon as I get to this visitor center in 2 miles anyway. I'm just gonna keep my stuff on, and, you know, I'll put away my puffy stuff. But I'll show you a video of it. It was just so funny because Mims had called me, and she was like, oh, do you have a surprise coming for you?
I was like, you're in for a real treat. Because it hit me at my waist, which is like right where my hip belt hits. So luckily my pack didn't really get too wet, but I knew it hit her higher, obviously. It was so cold.
I'm so mad.
Doesn't look like that deep from this perspective.
Just wait.
Yeah.
It just got deep at like the very end.
You'll hear me say it.
It's cold. It's cold. Okay, past my knees. Okay, there's my hips. Tiptoes. 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 Belly button. Waist. That's so cold. I hated that immensely.
Polly, please clip that.
Yeah, so there's another gift for you, Polly. They like to take little clips of me making moaning noises. One time I sent Zach a video of me like opening pasta from DoorDash, and I was like, oh. And now he just inserts that. He's going to pull it up for you. I guarantee he's got it on standby.
I love that.
So every time he gets one of those gems.
Oh, yeah.
Goes in the bank.
That was quite the moan video.
That's me looking at pasta.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
That's Maggiano's.
Oh, Maggiano's.
So.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
so that's the conclusion, yeah?
What?
Yeah.
Of the trail.
It was.
Yeah, that's where we got off. We went.
And then we had the best day driving back. Like, we got to my car and we got honestly, it was some of the best pizza I've ever had in Yellville.
Oh yeah, Yellville.
Wait. So
such good
everyone,
pizza.
when you posted that you were on the OHT, you got like 19 comments being like, "Go get this burger."
That was in Ozone. We were in Stan's Paradise at the time.
Okay.
We weren't
So you
leaving
didn't get
Stan's.
the burger.
No, we did dub Yellville though heaven on earth.
Oh my God, yeah.
We did say that
best
was
pizza ever.
which is crazy because we're both from New York. But Yellville was exactly what we wanted it to be at the time.
Yellville.
It was like 10 minutes north of Dillard's Ferry. It was like the first town we went through, and I had been craving pizza like nobody's business this trail. So I was like, the first thing we're doing when we get in my car is getting pizza. So we got pizza for the road. We were both like just so happy. And then Juliana found us a Airbnb in Fort Smith, back where her car was, because then we went and picked up her car at Lake Fort Smith. And oh my gosh, we got so much food. We got pad thai, we got Mexican, we got local beer, we got Sonic Blast, and just like ate ourselves into a complete coma. And we're both so happy to be off trail. It was like the best gift ever.
Yeah, that is the proper way to end a trail.
Yeah, it was great.
I'll dream about that day forever.
Yeah.
It was really perfect. We were so happy that day.
Do you feel recharged? Like every time I come off trail, I feel like a new man.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel like new ladies?
For the most part, I mean, I feel like
Aside from your feet.
it's one of those things where I'm like, I want to embrace this physical fitness that I have achieved over the past 2 weeks and like continue it and not fall back into my like lazy couch slump that like a corporate job pulls you into. So I'm trying to like mentally commit to keeping going to row classes, like staying like in that momentum of, you know, it feels good when you feel good, and when you're hiking that much every day, you feel good, right? But at the moment, I'm just waiting for my left foot to stop being the way it is.
You said you finished on the 17th, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's been 4 days, and you're still pretty fucked up.
This is the best this cut has looked since. I was sending you guys photos of it when it was like in its rawest form. But the bump on the back just hasn't made any progress, and that's kind of annoying because it hurts to even touch, and it makes it uncomfortable to wear shoes.
One thing worth touching on is, what is the reception like? Because Mimsy mentioned that you had basically no service. We got a couple texts from you, but it was pretty silent otherwise.
Yeah, there was, like, if you have Verizon, there were some climbs where you'd get it at the top. Couldn't stay for long to have it. And it wasn't even LTE. It was like 1 bar 5G. Like I wasn't going to be downloading anything, or podcasts wouldn't bring on the new episode or anything like that.
But you called Garrett
But I could make a phone call.
Yeah.
It was good for phone calls. It was good for sending texts. And there was one night, the night we took the half day for the rain, close to the end.
we both had service.
That's
nice.
But that was after we finished the original 164 miles. And basically once we crossed that and we got on those dirt roads and we were in that northern section, my reception didn't go away for the majority of it.
Yeah, the closer you get to the Buffalo River, that's a super popular river for water goers. So we both had service, but I had no service the whole time. But I also I wasn't really checking my phone at all. You know, I was happy to keep it off. But you had service all the time.
And that's part of the curse of it, is like I knew I would get at the top of the hills and I'd make a phone call to like make sure people knew I was okay. But I almost liked that I didn't have it as much, because I didn't have the time with the limited daylight to afford to be able to take 10 minutes to scroll on Instagram, you know, or to be able to just like sit there and veg out on my phone. I had to make it very quick, where it was, I can make a phone call, so I'm going to call while I'm hiking, and then the call's going to disconnect when I lose it again, and then that's that. So it did help me keep my pace to not have that as a temptation.
Sweet. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we missed. Sounded like a good
It was
good
such a
time.
great reset.
Oh, one last thing I'll touch on is when we did Tim's episode, I had asked, is this a trail you could bring dogs on? And he mentioned how the Buffalo River section, it's on and off with whether or not they allow dogs. I wanted to follow up and make a, like my perspective point of view, I wouldn't bring a dog on this trail.
Because of the water crossings?
Yeah, once we had learned about the water crossings and we had our extra Zoom call with Tim to go over kind of what each one would look like. Harper doesn't love water. She'll play in it, like on the side, like if there's like a pond, she likes to splash. She doesn't love swimming. And I mean, for a lot of these creek crossings, you're either carrying the dog or the dog's going to be swimming.
It's too deep.
It's too deep. And if your dog isn't a dog that really, really loves to swim and is good at swimming, especially when they are faster moving, I just think it's not a kindness to, like, I think if I had brought Harper and made her go through some of these crossings, I think it would have, like, kind of affected her trust with me, you know, not to get too, like, mushy, I love my dog, but, you know, I think she would have trusted me enough to go through it, but I think she would have been afraid, and I don't think she would have liked it. So that's why I chose to leave her at home, and every time we went through a river or a creek, I was just reinforcing, I don't think this is one to bring a dog on.
Yeah. Good. It's a good note to share with others. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are interested. Well, thank you both for the roundup. Sounds like you had a blast. A good March hike. He gets the full endorsement. If you're looking for something a little bit more isolated.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Good early season hike when you don't have any other options.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Well, thanks for the rundown, guys. It sounded like a good time, especially at the Stan retreat.
Stanley's Angels.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. That's it. Thanks.